Yes, Barbara, if you'd like to put your, if you have a question or a comment, you could put it in the chat box. All right, we're going to get started. This is Carolyn Jacobs with WGBH Education, and I really appreciate you joining us and taking time from what I know is precious evening hours or late afternoon hours for some of you. And I hope that you find the session we have planned to be time well spent. We're going to have a conversation and take a look at a new collection of professional development resources that support the standard related to perseverance in math classrooms. We are using Adobe Connect as our webinar platform. I think everyone has gotten in without too many issues. Yes, in answer to your question, Karen, we will provide certificates if you would like them to acknowledge your participation. And you'll have my contact information at the end, and just send me an email requesting the certificate and we'll get it out to you. We are recording the session. We will send you the link to the recording tomorrow in an email. We are also setting up a Google folder that will have handouts and links and also this presentation in it, and we will share that with you through a link in the same email tomorrow, maybe Monday, but I'll try my best to get it out tomorrow. If you're just joining us and you're on the phone, please make sure you mute your line using *6. We're limiting the microphone to just the presenters, so we avoid talking over one another and having any background noise. So we invite you to chat with each other and with us in the chat box. We do get a transcript of the chat box, so if there are questions that you ask and we're not able to get to you, we'll make sure we get to you individually afterwards. So as I mentioned, we are going to be looking at some professional development resources that support the perseverance standard. Experts say that perseverance is not a characteristic reserved for a special few, but something that all mathematics students can develop, practice, and improve. And the resources which were produced by WGBH address the problem-solving and perseverance standard. This presentation is sponsored by WGBH, which is Boston's public media station and an educational foundation. I'm in the education department at WGBH. WGBH is the oldest and largest public media station, and we produce about 40% of the content for broadcast that is shown across the country on your local public media stations. So programs like Nova, American Experience, Masterpiece, Frontline, lots of kids programs all start in Boston at GBH. We have partnered with PBS to create a service called PBS LearningMedia, and I'm very curious if you would let me know in the chat box if that is a new animal for you or if you are already familiar and perhaps have used PBS LearningMedia. I'm always interested to know what the awareness is or experience is with what our website. This is a supplemental curriculum service that has currently about 125,000 classroom-ready, standards-aligned resources. It is totally free for teachers and students. And you will find resources that span all grades, K-12, and also all subjects. And we're always adding new content. Yeah, I do see a lot of people talking about learning media, and often you find us through a Google search and you may not even know you're on the site. It doesn't require you to log in if you're just viewing your resources, but if you want to use the site to its fullest, where you download and save things to folders, etc., you create an account, which is free and takes about 30 seconds or so. The presenters tonight are Dr. Lillie Albert and Martin Clarke and myself. Hi, if you've just joined us, would you mute your line using *6? Thank you very much. Lillie is an associate professor of mathematics and technology education at Boston College, Lynch School of Education. She's a teacher educator, and she is an academic advisor for WGBH on this project called Keep Going. Marty Clarke is a high school math teacher at Boston Collegiate Charter School in Dorchester, Massachusetts. He also coaches varsity basketball and softball. He earned his MED from Boston College. He was a student of Dr. Albert's and is currently also a Boston College Noyce Fellow. And Marty is one of the teachers who is featured in this collection. We did some filming in his classroom, and he's going to be talking a little bit about that. Okay, so I mentioned that I'm going to be sending out the recording link and also a link to a Google folder where I'll put everything that we're talking about tonight, so you have it easy access and you'll be able to find it and not have to take notes. So this is a link on this page to the collection, the Keep Going collection that we're going to be talking about tonight. And it's divided into 5 different sections, 2 overview videos, and then 3 classroom sections also. So the collection itself is a group of video examples and background materials to help high school teachers understand and implement the problem-solving and perseverance standard from the Common Core Standards for Mathematics. The 2 overview videos are about 7 minutes apiece, and then the films of the teachers in action are each 7 to 9 minutes. Accompanying the videos are resources for you that include handouts, observations by the teachers who are filmed, and takeaways by them about how they're changing their practice. And then also questions for you to think about when you are pre, during, and post watching their classroom videos. So the support materials are pretty comprehensive. All right, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Albert from Boston College. Go ahead, Lillie.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to start with a question. This is a question that often comes up in my math methods courses with my elementary or secondary math pre-service teachers. And it also comes up when I do professional development with teachers. If you can recall, I think back before 2010, every state had its own set of academic standards, meaning public education students in each state were learning to different levels. So there was a common perspective among the committee that was put together to develop the Common Core Standards. And this perspective was that all students must be prepared to compete not only with their American peers in the next state, but also they need to be able to compete with students around the world. So with this perspective in mind, the idea was, well, how is this going to be resolved? And the committee identified 4 different issues that had to be addressed through the Common Core State Standards for Mathematics. And the first one had to do with focus and coherence. They wanted to develop standards that was coherent, that you could see connections across the standards. They also wanted a balanced approach. And again, in terms of being balanced, they want the content standards to focus both on conceptual and procedural understanding. And they also, looking at if you remember the NCTM standards, which had the process standards, considered addressing issues around mathematical practice. And the idea there was to focus on reasoning and sense-making in mathematics. Their final issue they wanted to address with the Common Core Standards, and I think it was a very ambitious issue for them to attack, but I think the committee believes it's achievable. And this is the one that has caused a lot of conversation among secondary teachers. And that is the idea of college and career readiness. The Common Core standards in math, they sort of lay out a vision for what students need to master to be ready for credit-bearing college mathematics courses without remediation. So I can summarize this by saying that the curriculum state standards for mathematics is about having precise understanding of subject matter and learning how to present it with a rich mixture of activities, applications, and problems.
Lillie, excuse me, it's Carolyn.
Yes.
I just want to interrupt you for a second. A couple of people have asked if you could speak a little louder.
Oh, a little, okay.
So, yeah, just put on your teacher voice.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And the general idea is that in regards to the Common Core standard is that at all levels, the teaching the Common Core needs to emphasize connections that exist among all the individual topics. So considering the individual topics, what I wanted to do was, I'm not going to focus on the content standards because we're going to focus on the mathematical practice, but only one of them, and that's the first one, making sense of problems and perseverance and solving them. And I'm not going to focus on this one at this point. I'm going to sort of give a brief review of the other 7 mathematical practice standards. The second standard, to reason abstractly and quantitatively, what we're really asking students to do is that we want them to be able to make sense of quantities and their relationships in problem situations. And at the same time, we're asking them to, that we want them to be able to talk about the mathematics using mathematical language and to support or oppose the work of others. So we want them to use language, develop arguments that can not only support their own reasoning, but also the reasoning and thinking of other students in the classroom. And the fourth mathematical practice standard has to do with modeling in mathematics, and this requires students to use mathematics to solve real-world problems. And these real-world problems emerge from either students' everyday experience. It can emerge from society, the workplace, and the whole idea is for students to gather information, to gather data, and use this information to help them understand the world around them. So this is what the fourth standard, the idea around the fourth practice standard. Our fifth practice standards, we're asking students to select the appropriate mathematical tools to use and to use it correctly to solve problems. And so, for example, in an elementary school classroom, we're asking them to use concrete models, whereas in a high school classroom, using the graphing calculator is not an unusual request or requirement for students in terms of thinking about the tools that's going to help them strategically solve mathematical problems. And the sixth standards, to attend to precision, we want students to be able to speak and solve mathematical problems with exactness and thoroughness. For example, use precise and exact mathematical language to provide explanations that make sense. That's what we're looking for students to do. And the seventh mathematical practice standard, we want students to find patterns in reasoning that can actually help them solve really complicated and complex problems. What we're really saying is we want students to be able to step back and shift their perspective, considering how patterns can help them solve a more difficult problem. And then the last mathematical practice standard, we want students to look for and express regularity in repeated reasoning. We want students to keep an eye on the big picture. But at the same time, when they're considering the big picture, we also want them working on and working out the details of the problem. And if you think about these 8 practices, it might look like just a checklist. But the main features of the standards for mathematical practice is to address connections and coherence among these different topics, especially since the practices rest upon important processes and proficiencies with long-standing importance in mathematics education. So now what I want to do is engage you. We're going to, I want you to take these 2 poll questions. You can start putting up your answers to these questions. There are several strategies that are important to building classroom culture of perseverance in math, and these 2 poll questions highlight 2 of them. Students can become reliant on teachers as the expert. So I see here that for the first question, most people are saying that how often do they leave the thinking to students? We have people who suggesting that, well, 46% saying often, and then 52% says sometimes. And in terms of the second question, how often do you recognize productive and unproductive struggle and act accordingly? We have over 50% that are suggesting that they act accordingly and that do that very often, and we have about, it's increasing. Now we have 61% that act accordingly. Well, teaching, as stated earlier, teaching perseverance means helping students to develop and trust their own ability to think through and tackle problems. You are the resources to your students in problem solving, but you are not the main resource or the authority in the classroom. So as teachers, what we have to do, we have to learn to recognize productive and unproductive struggle and be able to act accordingly. So we have to become comfortable allowing students to struggle, and sometimes this is hard for us to do. We have to allow them to grapple with the problem, and we do this because it's beneficial to their learning. However, if you have a student that is using the same strategy over and over and over again without any improvement or success, this can greatly influence that student's interest in mathematics, especially around his attitude and disposition regarding mathematics. And we don't want that to happen. So what we need to do as teachers, we need to know our students and know them well, and we need to recognize the signs of frustrations or when students are just tuning out. Then if we do this, we'll know when it's time to step in. We'll know when it's time to offer a question, or maybe we need to just provide them a hint to keep them keep them with the problem, or we might just make a simple suggestion. These are all things that we can do to help them be more persistent in their problem-solving work. So overall, the goal is for mathematics proficient students to explain to themselves the meaning of a problem and to look for entry points to its solution. So we want to support and encourage students to take risks, to admit when they make an error, and we want them to be able to be comfortable enough to ask for help when they need it, but we also want them to struggle productively. That's what we want them to do. Now, what I'm going to do next is to give you a sense of perseverance in a math classroom. We're going to watch just a couple of minutes of one of the videos. It's the introductory videos on perseverance in mathematics. According to experts, perseverance is not a characteristic reserved for a special few. Well, that's what a lot of people, well, you got to be really smart to do this and to keep, really smart problem solvers know how to stick with the problem. Well, we take the perspective that all students can learn how to stay with problems. They just need the appropriate type of support and assistance and to engage in appropriate type of problems. So let's take a look at, a classroom.
So you first of all would have to add 140, 150, and 130, which will equal 420. Then you subtract 720
Lillie, they will
by
hear
420,
it, but you and I
will
will
get
not hear it. And that's
X
okay. All right,
equals
we
300,
don't want the value
Nice,
to
good.
go
So what can you
through
do?
the phone.
subtracted by 180,
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
300.
We need to work on the idea that being good at math is not a matter of getting it and doing it fast.
Now, can I get Madison to say what you do when you plug in the vertex?
You plug the vertex.
So it's not about how fast do I arrive at this as much as what is it that I need to know, what I need to understand, and what I don't know yet. So once I have that as the culture of how I learn in class, then I think it allows us to build something more. It builds the understanding.
What are you thinking that you have to do?
Cosine, I can do tangent, I can do hypotenuse, because there's no missing side.
When tangential pathways are frustrating, they're willing to come back and say, oh, I'll try this one instead. When kids are willing to explore, you know that they're persevering. And that's giving opportunities for them.
When students struggle, they're getting smarter. So you need to keep that in mind and become more resourceful. And they also become more resourceful in terms of solving mathematical problems. And because students' ability to persevere is integrally connected to their metacognitive abilities, teachers have to teach students how to reflect. You can't assume that they know how. You have to teach them how to reflect and what to reflect on. And you can find this complete video on the PBS LearningMedia. It can be found there if you want to watch the entire segment. I also want to just talk a few minutes about what makes a good problem. And we're going to also examine just a small segment of another video regarding good problems. But I also want just to provide information about what I found in terms of good problems. And again, good problems are open and accessible to all types of students in the classroom. And what educators have found is that problems that are worth working on require students' concentration. It's not something that we want them to zoom through very quickly. We want them to really focus and concentrate on the work. We also want problems that will take time. They have to make adjustments to their thinking, and they have to also rethink even some of the applications they are using as they're solving the problem. So the best problems are sort of task-oriented type problems, and they are also relevant to students. So good problems come from teachers, come from you, come from your knowledge of the curriculum, and also your knowledge about your students. So let's take a quick look at a classroom around what makes a good problem.
All right, now I know you've never seen a quadratic equation, right? How could you possibly figure out which goes with which. But you have seen linear equations before, right? So can you, with your group, try to come up with some way to figure out which one of these equations matches up to the graph? All right, talk to each other, get started, I'll be walking around.
In modern society, in the 21st century, our primary work as professionals is to solve problems. Sometimes they're very neat, but oftentimes they're just messy. Problem solving centers around struggle. And if you can't struggle if the problem is clean.
There's this phrase in math education, don't lower the cognitive demand. So problems that are worth working on have high cognitive demand. You have to concentrate, you have to take time, you have to really think about what you know and what applies here, what the problem means.
You guys think that would be like what, 6, 2? I mean 2,6? 2,6. Yeah, that's what we're at 6, right?
Mathematics is not a static experience that pathway to how do I approach something unknown using the little things that I've mastered and apply them in new and unfamiliar ways is the work of learning. That's what we're modeling.
Thank you, people. You'll be ready. Practice these more. You did a great job today.
And I just want to close out this segment by saying that if you have low entry problems that are low entry but have a high ceiling, these types of problems are really good to use in the classroom, and they can be applied and used by all types of students in the classroom at various levels. And these problems, they offer really multiple entry points, and they can be solved using different strategies. So this, and again, if you want to see the full segment of the video, it can be found on PBS LearningMedia. And now I'm going to turn it over to my former student, Martin Clarke.
Thank you, Dr. A. Hi, everybody. I'm Marty Clarke. I teach high school math in Boston High School. I've taught Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Calc. Dr. A brings a lot of experience in, so I'm just going to try to talk about things I try to do in my classroom that I think have helped students build and persevere through questions, and I think bring a little bit more joy to the classroom. So one of the first things that I think about when I think about students persevering is whether or not they have confidence in math class in general. And so what I like to focus on is how can I set up a situation in class where every student can get started, students can check each other's work, and I can make sure that every single kid in the room can do something and that there is this high ceiling that Dr. Albert talked about. So I'm going to quickly show a video of my classroom that Dr. A previewed and then come back to the slide. So bear with me for people who the video is not working for. So in my video, when people came to film, I was introducing a new topic on quadratics and really didn't know how the students were going to respond because they truly had never seen the equations that they were looking at before. But I tried to design something where students could work together, so I'm going to show you a couple minutes from that now.
If you plug in 1, that's kind of like substitution, right? The vertex is still come over, right? Yeah. So 1 times 1 plus 2 is 2. I'm sorry, no, because I forget that X right there, so they're plugging in.
Plus 2 minus 2. So that'll be equals 1 equals 1 plus 2 minus 2. So these cancel out and it'll be 1 equals 1. So that'll be again.
So B.
Again, yeah.
What do you guys think it would be like, what, 6, 2? I mean 2, 6?
2,6.
Yeah, that's the vertex, right?
Should be multiplying this by -1 every time.
Yeah. It's like -1, -3.
And then let's check for this one as well. Let me show you. You're doing this equation?
I'm doing this equation.
What's that, C?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to see if it works with C.
All right, Tiff, will you explain what your group is trying to do, please?
What my group's trying to do is plug in what the vertex is for each equation.
So you're going to find the vertex for each thing. That was your step number 1.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, can I get Madison to say what you do when you plug in the vertex?
You plug the vertex into the equation, and if it doesn't work, then you try a different one.
Okay. So what did you try to do next?
Then I plugged it into the equation.
You plugged what in for what?
I plugged X in for X and Y in for Y.
Okay. And did it work?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Because 1 equaled 1.
Now here's my question for everybody now. Could it be true for any other equation? Whatever the equation is for C, if I plugged in 1, 1, what do you think might happen?
It would be equivalent.
It would be true. So how do we know which one this equation goes with? Mary?
You could use C's vertex instead.
You could look at C's vertex and now see if that point is on the graph. All right, I'll let you guys keep working with whatever strategies you have.
Let me try.
All right, so I'll jump back to the presentation. And this, for me, when I had an activity that was brand new and students working, was really exciting and seemed magical, but it came from a lot of building and a lot of different design issues. So that might have been hard without some context. I've put in the slides here, if people can see them, a couple of activities that I've had different classes do. One's for Algebra 1. That's the slope-intercept form, and one is on the right with the different functions and transformations for an Algebra 2 or pre-calc class. And how I try to start all of these activities is by just asking students, what do they notice? And sometimes I'll have them think on their own, and sometimes I'll have students working in pairs or in groups to try to generate every single thing that they can notice that's familiar, what's different about different things. And what that does usually is it gets kids who wouldn't usually participate to talk. I have students who feel comfortable throwing out answers that might not lead to anything, but they're willing to at least engage with the material to start. And so either I'll write everything on the board, or I'll have a student try to list out everything that's been going on, what people notice. And what's nice about that is that that's a really low entry, easy for anybody to participate with. But afterwards, when we have this long list of things that students have noticed about the equations or about the different graphs or whatever they're working with, all of a sudden now we can take a step back and I can have students evaluate which of these things that you've noticed are going to be the most useful, right? Which activities are going to be able to have you say, I can match these now, or I can complete this task because I know this information is important. So everybody can participate, but then there is the cognitive demand to think what information is actually helping us. And it helps students think about their process more than just getting to a solution. And it helps students think about whether or not they're seriously contemplating what they're doing before they act, or whether they're just thinking, how do I get to the answer, and running straight out the gate. So the activity that you saw in the video was a bunch of quadratic pictures of graphs and a bunch of different equations that they had never seen before that they were trying to match. And it was exciting to see them use strategies. For me, I was pretty happy to see that they were using things we had done before, but it helps when your class has a connective tissue that you're using throughout the year. So a task I have up now asks students to do a similar thing where they're matching information they get about inputs and outputs with linear functions that I was hoping they'd translate to the next unit. So one of the things in my class that has helped build confidence for students is that usually there's a strategy from something they've done before that they can use later on in the year. So this task that you're seeing now has students to plug in points to figure out which function, F, G, H, or J, is being used, and the task in the video asks students to do a similar thing but in a new setting. So things that I think about that Dr. Ray talked about in terms of productive and unproductive struggle are when students are stuck and you're wondering, how do I get them to work together, instead of just asking me, hey, Mr. Clarke, what's the answer? How do I do this? Or am I doing this right? And so part of that confidence, I think, comes from having kids, every time we try something new or anytime we start a new unit, generating a list of strategies before any student actually starts a question. So having the scaffold so every student can access it or notice something is important in picking a good question. I also think that having everyone generate a list of strategies is effective, because then we can decide which one is the most efficient, which one will be the most beneficial to us as we go about solving this question. Also, throughout the video, if you check them out at pbslearningmedia.com, I think that trying to celebrate students' achievements is something I do frequently in the video, and finding students who can actually model whatever a correct answer is instead of always having me show the correct answer tries to help send the message that I'm not the hub and center of all learning, but that students can work together and actually work through any task that you put in front of them, so that when they do see another new task, they're not relying as much on me, but they are looking forward to listing out their strategies and coming one that will get them to the correct solution. So in conclusion, before I pass it back to Dr. A, I think the things that I focus on most in class are building confidence and trying to limit how much time I spend as the focal point of attention, and getting kids to know that there is value and success to be found in the process of a question as opposed to just finding the answer. And so that's culturally what I try to build more than anything else. And I think trying to come up with questions that allow all students to participate and then everyone to discuss and try to think about what the best way to do something is has been useful for me.
Marty, if you would
Yes.
glance at the chat box. Also, there's a Jay Matson has a question, and there might be some others.
I'll look at that. Thank you. Do you want me to answer them live or launch the next video with Dr. A?
Wait, why don't you answer that question, Marty?
Great. Okay, so the question I'm seeing now is the honors class or charter class. So it's a charter school in Boston, at least for our school, and most places that I know of, is a public lottery school. So anybody in the city of Boston can attend. The application just requires a signature that you can complete online and in any language right now. The class that is videotaped for me is a non-honors course. We do have honors classes at our school and classes that are not at an honors level. So the class that is filmed is a non-honors Algebra 1 course for 9th graders. And the school does have an honors 8th grade Algebra 1 course, and I currently teach that class, and then an honors pre-calculus class and an honors geometry course. But the charter school itself is no indication of the level.
Marty, you might want to, if it's appropriate, show the student work on the two layouts if you wanted to show
Absolutely. So sure, in the video that I showed, students were trying to match equations that they had never seen before, and so I can line that up now. One of the things I was excited to see was that in the task I showed quickly that had the functions that were lines, F, G, H, and J, that students were trying to match. They used similar skills for the quadratic, and not seeing the student work come up
we've
again.
lost Marty. Marty, we've lost the document of the student work 1. Would you try 2, please, and see if that comes up?
Absolutely. Here we are.
Yeah. Okay.
So the equations that you see here on the student work, students had never seen any equation with that they were trying to match to a graph or quadratics before. We had talked a lot about quadratic graphs before they did this, but they hadn't interacted with any 2 variable equations that had an exponent other than 1, so this x minus 2 squared was something brand new. But they had a strategy of knowing deeply that points that they plugged into the equation also appeared on the graph, and so I was trying to get at that core understanding and also show them that their strategy that worked for lines works for polynomials in whatever degree that they'd like. And so it was exciting to see them use that strategy and try things and then try to compare them, and the people crossing off A, C, and D and then finally settling on B was fun for me to watch. I'm coming back to the chat box to see about any questions. A lot of the stuff in the video, all the things that you see, I designed myself, and I'm happy to send anything to anybody if you leave your email address or with colleagues at our school. If there are any other questions about the task or anything, happy to answer that now.
Thank you, Marty.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would mute your microphone and then just glance at the chat box. There might be some other questions or comments. Thank you. Really very helpful. All right, Lillie, if you would like to play or comment on, this is another classroom resource in the collection, and then you'll turn the mic over to me. And you need to speak up, Lillie. Thank you.
Yes. I'm just going to show you just a small segment from a classroom. This is a multi-tiered probability problem, and it's a 11th and 12th grade AP class. It's the only AP class that we have in the collection. The other videos that you would see are not AP or honors classes. And this will give you a sense on how to launch the problem, how to get started with
We had a problem on our recent exam that posed quite a big challenge for a lot of us. I would say that maybe one person got it right. So obviously it's something that we need to go back over. There's some miscommunication somewhere. There's some things that we are missing. So it's going to be a problem that's going to have a lot of information, sort of multiple steps, multiple tiers. So I'm going to get it up on the board for us. A lot of information there. You've got to try to take those words and somehow make it so that you have a condensed version of that information so that it can help you figure out what's the probability that it was brewed strong, and then suppose the coffee is strong. So suppose this morning when I got coffee it was strong. What's the probability that Mr. Mitchell brewed it? So again, it's going to take some effort, but that's okay. I have no doubt that you are going to give me your level 4 effort. My suggestion, make some sort of a visual.
Miss what? 0.1.
I'm just kind of confused. How would you
When you have those point 2 and point 3, how do you put them together with the percentility coming?
I don't know. Because I thought we were focusing on the coffee thing, like how strong it's brewed.
Yeah, but it's corresponding with the percent time that they come in early.
And I'm going to stop the video there, and you can see the entire segment on the WGBH PBS LearningMedia. And one of the things that's very interesting about Kathy in the work that she's doing with this particular class is the problem that she developed actually came out of her experience in the class, with teachers at her school. So it's a real-world problem. So I think that was a very good example on how you can take something that's happening within your school and develop it into a mathematical problem. So now I'll turn it over. And thank you very much, and we really appreciate you joining us tonight. Carol?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I'm going to go back to the slides. Thank you, Lillie and Martin. We will be looking at the chat box as we wind down. I have a few more minutes of some information I'd like to pass on to you. But Lillie and Marty, feel free to pose questions in the chat box and generate a little conversation, or just monitor and see if there's any questions for you. Sort of in midstream, I've never had this happen before, I lost the view of the earlier chat box, but I think that I may be able to retrieve that. Anyway, okay, so in the collection, Derek Boyd is another one of the teachers that we have filmed, and again, you'll find these 7 to 9 minute classroom videos and with resources that just enhance them. All right, I mentioned that everything that you've seen so far is available at no cost on PBS LearningMedia. The site, as I mentioned also already, has thousands of resources that we're drawing from content partners that we work with. We have a large project going on right now with NASA to develop new content around Earth and space. And we also draw from programming on public television to create these short segments of videos and support materials for teachers. And then, of course, we're drawing on a lot of our kids programs also. When you go to the site, it's fairly intuitive to figure out how to search and find what you're looking for, and save it to folders or your favorites, and then share your folders with your colleagues or students. There are some very cool teacher tools that let you create your own video-based quizzes. You can download a lot of the videos so you're not relying on streaming. And also everything is aligned to national, and if you're in certain states, also state standards. And your students can have their own accounts also. You will find short clips, interactive activities, lesson plans, self-paced modules, thousands of images, and professional development. And what we've been talking about tonight, of course, falls in the genre of professional development. One way that we help you organize the site is we create collections. And so the Keep Going is considered a collection. You go to one page on the website, and then you have several links to individual resources that all fall under that heading. And here are 3 examples of other collections. Khan Academy is a content partner. Get the Math is produced by WNET out of New York, and Think Math, KET out of Kentucky. They're public television stations. A related collection to Keep Going is Making the Case. And this was a collection that we launched, I think about 1.5 years ago. Teachers and math educators are focusing on the role of questions and discussion in their classroom all around the argumentation standard. So this collection is, of course, on Learning Media also, and instead of being broken down by classroom teachers, you can see that this is the organization of the videos, but the same basic style. You will see classroom videos, interviews with experts, interviews with teachers, so you'll see them in action, and then you'll see them talking to the moderator. And anyway, so I encourage you to check this collection out also, Making the Case. All of this was, Making the Case and Keep Going was, they were both funded by the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation, produced by GBH with the foundation funding. Again, we've been looking at the Keep Going collection. Just wanted to acknowledge another collection. We do have many teachers with us in the lower grades. There's a very large collection of several hundred resources on Learning Media called Math at the Core, all to support middle school math. And this one, I just pulled out this one about Jake Shimabukuro. I saw him recently, and he is just an amazing ukulele player and a natural-born teacher. And there are several videos of him talking about mathematics in music, and I just found them very interesting, so I wanted to call your attention to them. And I'm going to play a minute or so of a clip that is a little off topic, but I think might be of interest to mathematics teachers. There is a collection called The Secret Life of Scientists and Engineers. It's a project out of Nova, and this is a series of, oh, I don't know how many there are. I would bet there are 50 plus. 3 to 5 minute clips where a STEM professional is profiled, and they talk about their job, and they talk about also their life outside of work. And Sabine Seymour is a fashion technologist, and these STEM career profiles are one of my favorite sections of the service. So I thought I'd just play a minute or so of that for you. And I apologize that some of you are having trouble. I have to believe it's with your connection or the speed that you're not able to see the video, because we're not streaming them. They are uploaded to the webinar platform. So I hope that this one plays for you.
I love to be involved in things that people can't imagine yet. The work I do with fashionable technology is a reflection of my own personality and my own personal interest. In my first book, I defined fashionable technology as an intersection between design, fashion, science, and technology. There are consumer products out there, for example, the Adidas My Code shoes that measure how fast you go, where you go when you play soccer. The same with the Nike Plus Fuel Band, where people can check how many calories they might use up during the day. But you can also see it in the fashion industry, where you have products that are changing color through different uses of inks. The light up dresses you see all over the place. So when I personally dream about fashionable technology, I dream about the ability to customize your own garments. In the morning, it has to be very tame and black, and you walk into the office. In the afternoon, you have some drinks with friends, and it becomes sort of like golden. And then in the evening, you really hang out and do some hip-hopping or something, whatever people do right now. And it becomes pink. I hope in the future that my textile understands the humidity in New York and has a cooling property that will cool me, but as soon as I hop onto the subway, it actually stops cooling me so that I'm not getting sick. But at the
Okay, I'm going to edit. There, that was about a minute.